You've been spending a lot of time playing guitar, right? But it feels like your progress keeps slowing down. Well, let me show you all the secrets I've learned in the last decade of playing and teaching guitar that I show my students to make them go from noodling around to confidently playing like a pro without taking 20 years to get there. But first of all, what is practice? Well, by definition, we have to perform an activity or exercise, a skill, repeatedly or regularly in order to improve or maintain one proficiency. And our definition too is to carry out or perform a particular activity, method, or custom habitually or regularly. So by definition, practicing is doing something often with the goal of getting better at a specific skill. Which means not every time you pick up guitar, you're actually practicing. A lot of times we pick up guitar and we're just playing songs, right? We're just having fun playing guitar. If you're not playing with the intention though of doing something to get better at a specific skill on the guitar, that's not really practice. So there's playing guitar and there's practicing guitar, but it's not the same thing. But we can't actually practice if we don't know what we're missing in our playing. So how do we figure out where we're lacking? Well, first I think it's important to note that there are two sides of your guitar playing. If we're talking about generating a real skill set to become a professional level player, there's your technical skills, which are like scales, spider walks, like triads, learning songs, being able to really put your hands on the guitar. And then there's your musical skills, which is your theory, your ear training, your ability to break down songs, and your songwriting. Now, the reason that both ends of these skill sets are so important is because obviously we need to be able to play the guitar, right? Like none of this theory really matters if you can't put your hands on them strings and make some good noises. But with that, when you get your hands on those strings and you're making those noises, then you want to get the separated skill set of understanding what you're doing and being able to apply music onto the fretboard. So when you're trying to figure out where you're lacking, I recommend self-analyzing your playing. Like ask yourself, can you play the major scale like cleanly? Like effortlessly too. I'm talking like, you know, eyes closed like behind your back, like, you know, because if you don't got eyes closed behind your back, you don't really know the major scale. So that's kind of getting your technical ability. Now, I'm not saying every time you practice guitar, you gotta get your guitar way up behind your head, but it's kind of like a practice of how well do you really know it. So I recommend when you're trying to figure out what you're missing, get these technical abilities first. Like I said, theory doesn't matter if you can't use it. So prioritize being able to get your hands on the fretboard and play something. But as you're analyzing your playing, think like, okay, what can I play? And now what do I actually understand? Like if you're able to play pretty easily, you can whip out some songs, you can play them comfortably. Now tell me, could you in a snap play that song in a different key? Because that comes into more of a musical skill set. So self-analyze yourself, ask yourself, where are you lacking more right now? Do you need more technical practice or do you need more musicality practice? And by the way, the best way to improve both sides of your skill set is to be around other players that are actually putting the work into getting better. That's why I opened a private community where I only let players in that have been playing for over a year and actually play every single day. The best part is it's completely free and it's linked right down below. I'm looking forward to seeing you in there in our live calls. So now we know how to pick apart our playing, but how do we build a practice plan that actually works? Well, often what I do with my students is I ask them, how long are you already playing guitar every day? Because we don't want guitar to become a chore, right? Like if I tell someone who's playing guitar 20 minutes a day to build a 4-hour practice routine, they're never gonna do that. It's not reasonable. So the way I think about telling my students how long they should commit to actual practice and not just playing, it's either half as long as they play. So if they play for, you know, an hour a day, it's 30 minutes, or it works its way all the way up to being about an hour. I'm not gonna tell somebody to run scales every day for more than an hour because who wants to do that, right? If you really want to run scales for 6 hours a day, I don't know, do that, but you don't need to, right? It's not a necessity to acquire these skills. So when we're talking about committing an actual amount of time to real practice, it's half of the amount of time you play, up to an hour. If you're playing 6 hours a day, fucking make an hour of it practice and then spend 5 hours having a blast. If you're playing for 30 minutes a day, have a little quick 15-minute routine and then 15 minutes of having fun. So how do I actually build these routines? Well, I often will split them into chunks. So if we're talking about, you know, we analyze their playing, let's say for example, we can play songs, like this is just an example practice routine of somebody who can play songs, but they want to start understanding music. So a lot of guitar players who can play songs haven't spent a lot of time on their basic scales yet, right? So if I'm just picking apart an average of like a guitarist who can do that, let me write this down. I'll have my boy Yin Ming put it up for you. Let's say we're doing a 30-minute routine. So for somebody who plays for an hour, right? Let's say 10 minutes of simply practicing the scale to a metronome. And you might say, Braden, you want me to do that every day? Like, aren't I gonna get bored of the scale? The thing is that the scale is everywhere, right? Don't learn the scale in one spot and stop. Learn the scale across the entire fretboard. I guarantee you 98% of the people who are watching this video don't know the major scale across the entire fretboard, right? You're probably one of them. So if that's you, put time towards that. If you want to be able to play all over the fretboard, you have to practice all over the fretboard. It sounds dumb stupid when you say it, and yet most people don't do it. So then I would have them do 10 minutes of labeling the scale. Now this is when you actually take your scale and you don't just play the notes, but you play the notes and, like it says, label them. So I'm not saying label them with the note names, but label them with the intervals. So if we're in C major here, often I'll have my students go really slow, play the note, hum, and try and match the pitch. Once you're matching the pitch, you can start to count up with the scale. So 1, and then you go to the next note. 2, 3, and say for example you're a little off the note when you start. You're like, try and sit there and find it with your hum before you sing. Like, 4, work your way up. 5, 6, 7, 1. And you don't want to just do this in this one spot, but as you're practicing, you want to move it around. I mean, let's say starting on a G below that, that'd be our 5. So 5, 6, 7, 1. And you want to really label that scale all over the fretboard and match your pitches with it, because when you separate the notes like that, you start to understand music to a completely different degree than you do now just by playing songs. And lastly, we would spend 10 minutes just breaking down songs. So the way that this works is you have a song, let's say Sunday Morning, right? It's a pretty straightforward one. Sunday Morning by Maroon 5. Only 3 chords. We got D minor, right? We got little D minor 7, G, C major 7. That's the whole song. We want to figure out what labels fit into that scale on the chords. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, each of those chords has a root note, right? D, G, C in that one. And if we know what key it's in, which we can kind of break that down by finding the home note. So if you listen to this, if you don't already know, and if you can't tell, every time we get to that C, it kind of sounds like we're getting home, right? Especially if I was to play like not as a major 7, just it's a very resolved sound. So we're in the key of C, and we want to figure out how can we label those chords in the key. We have D, so if we count up with a scale, 1, 2, D. Okay, so we know D is our 2, and then we're going down to G. So let's go C1, D2, E3, F4, G5. Okay, G5, and then we're back to C, our 1 again. So we have a little 2, 5, 1. And then you don't just want to put the numbers on them, but you want to say, like, what's the quality of the chord? Minor 2, major 5, and then a major 1 with that 7 on it. But the biggest challenge we guitar players face is how do we actually stick to this practice plan once we set it out, right? Like, it's so easy to sit here and say, yeah, I'm gonna practice for 30 minutes a day, every day, for forever. Are you though? It's hard to really commit to doing something like that. And oftentimes we as guitar players will have huge goals of like, oh, I wanna be rich and famous, and we're shooting for that goal, but it doesn't feel like practicing guitar really is the most direct route to that goal, right? I know I've been there myself. So something I found to be very helpful is to have your goal be the input action, not the output end game of what you're shooting for. What do I mean by that? Well, your goal could simply be to practice every day. Like, nothing's stopping you from setting that as your goal. And you could even have a phone reminder set. Say you get off work at the same time every day. You get home around the same time every day. You naturally pick up your guitar most days around the same time every day. Well, you can set a reminder on your phone that goes off at the same time every single day with the practice routine that says, do this. And if you set it and you said you were gonna do it, you're a lot more likely to do it with that goal being, I wanna practice every day. I've experienced this lately in my own life. I didn't go to the gym for like a whole year because it just didn't feel that important to me. I mean, in my head, I had this goal of like, you know, getting more in shape, but I guess I didn't care enough, right? But more recently, I decided to set the goal internally of just going, right? Just going and getting a good workout as often as I can. That's the goal. That goal is a lot easier to achieve. I can achieve that goal every single day. And when you can achieve your goal every single day, the big outcome will happen as a byproduct. So it's a lot easier to reach the big goal that you want to set when you set a smaller goal you can actually achieve every single day. And if you want me to personally build you a plan and hold you accountable on it so you can play guitar like a pro as soon as possible, then check out this video right here to see how you can book a call with me directly to have a map built out for you this week.